All right, so next up is Steve and myself for a Nebula and Portal overview. You gonna share, Steve?
I am. So we've been working, pretty hard since about a year ago to revamp the portal and to revamp the PM dashboard and kind of how we do our work. A lot of things that we had built worked really good, but they were a little slow and everything looked a little 1980s. So we were working on a more modern interface for our PMs to work through. So I just want to give you a little glimpse of where we're headed. We're in beta right now with the website and should be launching this within a month. So this is the new PM dashboard. We've got, just the normal stuff up at the top that you've seen before, the tabs at the top for how we do our work. But the main dashboard, we wanted to give you just a little more information straight up on the front. So I'm on Matilda Commons B. And if you hover over, you can see the shop start, field start. You can kind of see where the job is in the process right now. So it gives you a timeline along the middle, and then you can kind of see where we are with our budgets in this section. And down here at the bottom, we have a couple pictures. One of them is a Bluebeam icon, and when you click on this, it takes you to directly to the Bluebeam session for the job. So if you're, not sure what the Bluebeam session is and you don't want to go to the wiki site, you can just click here and it takes you to the Bluebeam session. And then this icon down here takes you to the model. So I just want to kind of walk you through how that would work. When you click on that tab, what we wanted was something, how it is when you go to BIM 360, pretty much every single time you have to log in, it never remembers you. I don't know why. But I'm picturing, Randy Wolf or, Nick Cosell coming to the portal, clicking the icon, and being confronted by a whole bunch of questions about how to log into their BIM 360 site, which they have no idea what that means, right? So Zach built a different interface, a different way to see the model that doesn't require that whole login step and everything else. So this is what Zach built was basically what we're calling Project Nebula, was the idea of like, can I get to the model in a quick, easy way directly from the portal without having to go through a whole bunch of question and answer steps if I'm in the field or I'm on a job site or even if I'm a customer at some point. Right now it's internal, but we hope someday to have it external. So this is the model for Matilda B that exists on BIM 360 now, just going at it from a different direction. So one of the nice things about, creating our own interface to the model is being able to, have that model then tied to the data that we're creating. And the first piece of data we wanted to tie to was, what we've been tracking right along, which is the progress of the different teams as they use the model. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go to LinkedIn because that job right now is out in the field. So LinkedIn, we've been assembling the units. We ran into a problem with the glass. They ran out of the glass because there were a bunch of remakes. So we've got some units we haven't quite been able to finish in the shop. And then we're in the middle of the install in the field right now. So as you go into the model, all the normal stuff applies that you would see in, BIM 360, except up here, we have this thing where it says normal colors, and I'm going to do by progress. And so you'll see a legend popped up here on the left, and you can kind of see what the status of the building is. So, anything in this nice golden color means we've installed it on the job site. So if you walked out there now, those are the units that are in. All this stuff in blue is finished in the shop and can be installed currently. So those are units we haven't installed yet, probably because the GC isn't quite ready for them. But in all those cases, we can do that install. But then there's some units that are still in like a green color over here. And these are the units that haven't been, they're done in engineering, so they're green, but they're not complete in the shop yet. So you can see the impact that the missing glass is having. We can't finish this piece of the windscreen right now. So just a nice, easy way to see the progress on the job. You have other choices up here. You can see it by palette. You can see it by week. So you can kind of see which weeks are which weeks. This is all week 10 in this nice dark color here. So this gives you a sense of like how we scheduled the building. But it's really more of a proof of concept just to give you an idea of tying our internal data into a graphic way to present it. So this is just a very introductory step that Zach built. Zach, do you want to add anything to any of this?
No, not really. You pretty much covered it. We do have a way now to create palette schedules through this interface, which we're still testing with the palette schedule people, Saul and Quentin and the field guys. And we're kind of introducing that to them as it goes, as the projects come up. But that's been working really well also.
Yeah, so what you saw the other day when we were doing our practice, there was a place in Revit where you could, tell it which units went on which palettes. Our vision is that the field would use a browser interface like this, and they could do that palette schedule through this interface. Because most of our field guys do not know how to use Revit, but an interface like this makes it easy for them to be able to use a 3D model and indicate the sequencing of the units, and then Saul can just inherit that data, or Quentin, into the Revit model, and they don't have to re-enter all the data they got from the field.
Yeah, it saves time for the field too, because, well, other than just having a 3D model, they were getting a printed sheet PDF set of the elevations, and they were using Adobe Reader or Bluebeam or whatever to add annotations to that to mark up where the units went, which palettes they went to, and which order they all went into. And it was a lot of work. It's just a ton of rectangles and numbers and labels. But with this interface, the new interface, they can just click on units, and it works kind of like it did in Revit, except now the field guy's doing it. And then now Saul also can just push a button and import it instead of looking at the PDFs and manually inputting it into Revit. So it's been working really well as far as I know.
Yeah, and kind of the vision of what we're trying to do, and you've seen a little bit of what's happened today in the talks is, we want to we want to kind of do things once and then have it sort of, slowly morph into the actual product at the end, right? And the idea of being able to grab the data from a sales model and then being able to translate that sales model into the actual building model, and then have that data carry through so you can see what we estimated, versus what we're building, if there's any differences there. So a lot of the work in the new portal is designed to enhance what we do at the sales end of things, so that we can actually, and I think if you guys saw or heard Mila's presentation, what she worked on over the summer, Yana's daughter, was an interface for us to get out of Excel in the sales group and be able to put our data directly into the portal. And then that data can track through. So, at some point in the future, these units on the building can be related back to what we bid, and we'd know, is there any differences? Did we change anything about it? Is the glass type the same? Is it, have we covered all the things that should have been covered, right? So this is kind of what this project's about, is building a more next generation portal that can store the data that we want to store, and then be able to tie the models that we build and the stuff you guys are doing in Revit, tie that data into the BIM 360 model, so we can see progress. We can see, I should be able to look at this unit, or maybe even some panels, and see, have they been ordered? Where are they in the ordering process? Have they been delivered? If they've been delivered, where are they on the job site, or where are they in the shop, right? We have that data, but tying it into the model is sort of our next move forward, to be able to see all that directly in the model, and then at some point be able to share this information with our customers and help them see better where we're at, what we need, and you know, help them coordinate their projects better by seeing what our next steps are. So I could open that up for questions if anybody has any thoughts.
There's some questions in the chat.
Yes.
So, so Jessica asked, so this can update on the BIM 360 model. So what it's displaying is the current published BIM 360 model, not the design collaboration model that, you know, gets synced every time, but when you use Revit to publish it to BIM 360, the one that you see in the folder, that's what it's displaying there. It can't modify your Revit file, well, at least not right now. I think it can in some limited sense, possibly in the future, but right now it's kind of read-only.
You said something about then Saul would click a button and publish that.
He pushes he sets up a workspace in Nebula and sends a link to the field guy, and the field guy can make his palette schedule, but it's separate from the Revit model. The Revit model doesn't change itself. It's all read-only. The field guy makes their palette schedule in a separate database on the internet, and then Saul can grab that database and insert it into the Takeoff program and update the Revit model from Revit.
Yeah, so, but he's not recreating it. He's just pushing a button, and then what the field guy got now is updating the Revit model. Or is Saul trying to recreate it? That, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Saul isn't recreating it. He publishes the model to BIM 360 and creates a link in Nebula, gives that link to the field guy. Then the field guy makes his palette schedule using the Nebula interface and tells Saul when he's done. And Saul copies it out of that workspace in Nebula and pastes it into Revit.
So the work that the field guy did does eventually update our model.
It does, yeah.
The step of Saul who has that model open, you know, to click a button.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And he looks it over also to make sure that the field guy didn't make any mistakes or anything like that, because that happens all the time. They like to put 7 units in a palette, which is something we don't like to do.
Because then my next question related to that is if we can have that back and forth interface. I mean, could we have the field guys looking at the model and adding comments, or if they see something weird, noting it and have some way to convert that either into like notes in the Revit model or note issues in BIM 360?
So using the programming interface that I have here in Nebula, I believe it is possible to view issues and other BIM 360 sort of objects in here and be able to create them and those kind of things.
Steve and I have talked about that, Zach. And Steve was saying, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, you were saying you wanted that to be in Bluebeam still, right?
So far, I mean, depends on where we end up at the end, but right now, most of the stuff we're doing is in Bluebeam, like the comments and things like that, for sure.
Because we've talked about putting that stuff in the, having field feedback in the BIM 360 for sure.
I mean, I just, maybe not for everything, but I could see, you know, some things you could probably see in a 3D model that you're never going to see in a 2D document.
Yeah, most of the things that you see in BIM 360 when you go to Autodesk's website can be duplicated, or they can be duplicated here in some capacity. Most of the stuff, I have access to all that data on BIM 360. So, or we can make our own data and store it ourselves instead of using their issues, make our own version of it. You know, that there's all kinds of possibilities out there.
Yeah, but the number one thing right now is to streamline. The field wanted a 3D way to do the palette schedule, because looking at it in 2D is super hard. It's hard to see that this turns the corner, the size of the units, all that stuff. So the field wanted something that was 3D. So that was sort of the second challenge for Zach, was like, could we do our palette schedules, you know, from a browser? And that's kind of the interface you're seeing here. You know, the pool of units is listed down here. And then, you know, the field guy is just sort of building out his palettes, you know, sort of clicking on the units. and it's adding them to the pallet schedule as it goes. And then, if you make any kind of mistake, you can kind of just drag the units down and drop them off. You know what I mean?
So real quick, Steve. So like as the field is inputting this in, when the takeoff group UPDs, is that automatically retrieved from like the field input, or would Sal just look at this as a visual and then kind of redo the pallet schedule on his end?
There's a copy button at the top of this page. Yeah, that one. That will copy the entire contents of the Nebula palette schedule. And then you guys probably saw in Revit, there was an import button on the palette schedule sequencer, the unit sequencer. So that imports everything off the clipboard. So that's how he gets it out of here and into there. So there could be multiple palette schedules created by the field if they wanted to. Maybe they're testing options or discussing with each other. I don't know. But none of them are actually the real palette schedule. They're all saved on in the database somewhere, but they're not the actual palette schedule until they give it to Saul, and Saul copies and imports it into Revit and the Takeoff program.
So
And
Saul,
then pushes it out to the server after that, and then it's the real palette schedule.
so Saul still exists to be that check, right, between it being finalized and be uploaded onto the.
Exactly, and there's other things that Saul's doing. He's also adding all the unit
Like-
numbers and
or
location ID keys and all that, and printing them out. He's uploading it to the portal. All those things that he's still doing, checking it, making sure there's no bus, no big
Or-
pallets, that kind of thing.
Or
The
fixing.
cool thing. Oh,
I'm sorry. I was saying like, or fixing missing data, like one unit, remove it, and then some
Yeah.
of those are the issues.
I'm assuming kind of like if you had a bolted unit and then they usually belong in the same pallet, but the shop doesn't know that that's the shop. I mean, the field doesn't know the shop wants it like that. Then you'll probably be the one to come in and kind of uphold that kind of standard, right?
And
Yeah,
the
he could adjust the pallet schedule to put those units on the same pallet next to each other.
Cool.
So anytime this elevation get updated, does the PM also get notified so that they know what's going on with their project?
As far as updated by drafting or updated?
Or whoever updates this, the field, the drafting, the palette schedule, people, takeoff group, and so on.
Yeah, so this is really just a picture of what's in Revit. So if somebody updates the Revit model and makes pushes it out, then it could delete some of these units if somebody changed the units and stuff like that. So we would have to do that. So it's the normal notification system from the whoever's requesting the changes, like the PM. The drafting is still in place here. So
I was going to say one of the other nice.
Sorry, go ahead, Miko.
I was just going to keep on. I just didn't want to miss the point that the thing that's great about them having this all figured out and being able to have somebody interact with the model without needing to know Revit is it's something that we've been chasing in sales with the sales model as well, for the guys to be able to apply like the field labor rates to the frames to track those pricing. So we tried it in some other programs and it just wasn't letting us select the frames. So now that they've got this figured out, it's a huge help upstream potentially for other ways to put stuff in the estimate as well without somebody needing the Revit.
Yeah, so there's actually it's already built in there. You can see there's a CJ next to almost every unit, and that is the code that the field came up with to indicate that they're using cups and a jib. They could check whatever boxes they want here, and it changes the field setting method, and that gets imported when Saul also has a button on the sales unit number function that he has when he does the palette schedule to import this same information to the sales unit numbers in Revit. So the field can change any unit to whatever setting. They don't have to look at a separate chart. It's all just a bunch of checkboxes. And you guys could use that too. This works for any model in our BIM 360 account, as long as it's under a project with the job number in it.
If Saul updates the palette schedule during his phase, will this model in Nebula get updated as well with the new palette?
So once Saul gets this from the field as the
Right.
initial palette schedule, imports it into Revit, and then it goes into the Takeoff program with UPD, and then it gets published to the portal with the publish to portal button. Any changes after that, if they're not complicated, probably don't go through this again. It will just go through Revit, change it in there, and then re-upload it to the portal, just like he used to. If it's super complicated, like maybe they're starting in a different place all of a sudden, he can spin up another workspace of the same building, and they can start over.
So this just offers like a really good baseline for us all to do his.
Yeah, and for the field too, because it's easier for them. They're in 3D, and they don't have a bunch of annotations to make on a PDF that has to be reinterpreted later.
For sure.
They don't have to jump around the corners like Steve said, that's probably a big deal. They got to recognize what corners are where. Now they don't have to. It's right in the 3D model, which is a much better way to go.
Exactly. It's maybe not so bad on this building, but there are quite a few buildings where there's a ton of in and outs, and it gets really complicated, and there's balconies. And yeah, exactly.
Well, no, even when we started moving to Revit, we had elevations that get cut off, right? So that was like a pain to start palletizing using PDFs.
Yeah, there's no match lines or anything like that. So.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if we could have some view of this with like some of the Takeoff Browser options that the checkers could use to look through a model, just to kind of double check the drafter's work, because as we all know, checkers have keen minds to spot errors.
It definitely could be done. It's not there yet, obviously, but it could be done.
Can we check families, sir?
Yeah, the family data is in here, so you could do highlights of the mullions based on what families they are. You can do highlights of the glass based on their glass type or their glass bites. All those presets, with the exception of maybe the unit key one or the elevation key one, all the color presets that you have in the Takeoff browser could probably be replicated here as well. But again, this is the published model on BIM 360. So it has someone, it's not the live model. Someone has to go into Revit, someone or Clarity has to go into Revit and publish it to BIM 360 to be the real model. Like Steve, if you mouse over the V1 at the top of the screen by the file name, or actually just the file name, it says who uploaded this. This is my version of this in some random folder from June 22nd. So you can tell how old it is just by mousing over the project name or the file name and which version it is. But it has to be the published one. It's not like the design collaboration one that you guys all connect to using the cloud, using the BIM 360 cloud in Revit to open up a central model. It's not that same model. It has to be published.
You have to publish it separately, or can it be taken from where it's published on BIM 360 automatically and load it here?
It either has to be published manually, and there's a button in Revit to do that, or I think Amy was working on a way to have a server machine hidden in the back room do it automatically every night.
Zach, are you on vinyl?
What do you mean? Am I raspy?
Sound like you're on vinyl, yeah.
Very scratchy.
Yeah.
That's probably my beard scratching the microphone.
I need some cool jazz.
You should know, Jessica, there is no cool jazz.
Problem is he only plays disco. He's the disco pineapple.
So we can set up Clarity. Clarity can speak to BIM 360 and get to those central models upon design. So we can have it publish the model nightly for all the teams if we want to do that.
So it looks like this has a lot of potential for doing a whole bunch of different things. Maybe at some point in the future, the PMs and the field might use this actually on the job site with the contractor in that kind of scrum method, where if you're projecting what you want to do next week, then the contractor could show you these areas are ready for you, or they could say, oh, we have a delay because we're loading materials on this floor, and then you can make adjustments as required. So, I mean, it's just got just endless potential. What a fantastic tool, right?
And one of the nicest things also is the person that views this model doesn't have to have a BIM 360 account, and they don't have to have an Autodesk account. And right now they have to have a Walters and Wolf account, but we could take that away too. And then it would just be public for anyone to view on the website. You know, you could be a sales guy, you could be a competitor, you could be anyone, you know, viewing these models, and maybe we have ways for them to provide feedback to us. We can have, it could be an interface for architects to answer questions, maybe. I mean, there's endless possibilities once it's on the internet and everyone can get to it. And Katan, you have your hand up. You're muted, Katan.
Yes, yeah, okay. So you said that you can like a link, you can like open any elevation through clicking one of the units. So it will drag you to, you can connect it to the actual PDF sheets or a PDF page of our Bluebeam file.
Just like with BIM 360, you can see the different sheets. I have
Oh, okay,
access
yeah.
to all the sheets that you would have in BIM 360. I'm just not showing them here for
So yeah,
simplicity's
so
sake.
I have
But
one
there is
request.
a way that, like, just like BIM 360, you can do split screen between your 3D view and your 2D sheet.
2D sheets, okay.
That can be set up here as well. It's just
Yeah.
not there yet.
Yeah, I got it. So my question is, suppose, can we like, can I, the drafter can release the some elevations for review, so we can like highlight some area, and we can say, drafter can say, hey, these are the areas only released for the review. You know what I mean to say? So you know, because during the our modeling and our drafting process, most of the time what happened on our, as for example, on weekly progress, right? Instead of printing the weekly progress, I will upload this model every week on Nebula, means on BIM 360, and highlight, means mark some the elevations that those those elevations will be is ready, like is ready for the review. So reviewer don't need to go for anywhere else.
Yeah, there could be applications in that vein too. Definitely. Yeah. Like there's all kinds of things you can do with this interface, as Steve is demonstrating.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
The explosion of the building into all of its tiny little parts.
So we can add
like,
that too, actually.
You can see, like you have access in the programming interface for BIM 360, and this is called Forge, to access every little component in Revit for the most part, and all of its parameters. You can see that all the parameters that are on the glass, all the parameters that are on mullions, they're all there and can be processed. I can even see a world where UPD could be run through this, and the Takeoff program could exist in the cloud, but obviously we're a long ways from that.
And you said it doesn't currently like show you any unit numbers or like mark numbers for anything, correct?
You can click on any glass and it'll tell you what the location ID is. It'll also highlight it in the palette schedule over there, if you have the palette schedule up. But yeah, if you click on, if you have it on the select units mode like Steve has it, you can click on a glass and it'll highlight the unit. And then you can read off the properties. You can do this in BIM 360 as well. It's just there's no select units button to make it easy.
Yeah, that's the thing about these other programs is that they bust everything into individual pieces, so it won't recognize a whole frame. So this, with having it select the whole unit, is key.
Yeah, that selects the whole unit, and then you can go to properties, Steve. You can just hit cancel there.
Oh, properties?
Well, yeah, properties, and then you can scroll down and you can see the unit number. Now, obviously that can be made easier. There's a location ID and unit number, the week and day, what palette. That's the palette on the actual Revit model, not the palette that's in this palette schedule. This is separate. But yeah, you can see all the different properties there that we normally have in Revit.
So the idea is, you know, just again, these are a couple of proof of concepts we built, just some ideas we had, but you know, it opens up a pretty big door for things we can do. So, and the thing I wanted to show you is just that, you know, we're sort of building a much more modern portal to sort of be the way we get to this data. So these things will kind of tie together as we move forward. The sales portal, the project management portal, the dashboards, and then the model that we've been building will now be more accessible to everybody in the company rather than just the person who has a BIM 360 account and knows how to use it, or the person who can get to Revit. So just making those models more visible. And then, like you said, you know, starting to look at, okay, what else can we do with this model that would be great for the field guy or the shop guy or, you know, the checker or whoever, right? So
Sales.
yeah, sales, exactly.
I have a quick question. How did you guys get the Bluebeam ID behind that button? Is it something they enter, the PMs enter?
When you first get the job, you enter the ID number into the portal, and then it just automatically sets up that way.
Nice.
Is it possible to add like a limitation to, kind of going back to the pallet schedule, is it possible to add limitations to how much they can palletize?
Yeah, you can see that pallet that he has, pallet 12, has more than 7, and it's also highlighted in yellow, and there's a warning at the top of the screen that says pallet 12 has more than 6 units. So it's checking for those kind of things. It doesn't check for everything, obviously. If you put a tiny unit underneath a big unit, it's not going to warn you about that.
Yeah.
But hopefully that doesn't happen as much because it's easier to see that you're the size of the units that you're actually selecting because they're getting colored. Yeah, once Steve removes enough units, now the warning goes away.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Great stuff.
Cool. Pretty cool.
Pretty amazing stuff.
Nice job.
Very nice.
Awesome.
Job talk.
I'm going to be a little self-serving and unmute and clap for Steve.
Back.
This is very cool. I love the colors.
I'm going to mute everyone.